Welcome back, everybody, to the On the Perf podcast, brought to you, as always, by our friends at Atlas Gunworks. And my Atlas teammate here, Mr. Adam Maxwell, is going to bring in the Gary of the day and get us started off right. Mr. Maxwell, what do you have for us?
All right, Gary of the day this week. This weekend, I went and shot the Single Stack Classic in Illinois, the OG Single Stack Classic. It is a shadow of what I assume it once was. But I pulled a Gary of the day from there. So here's the thing, guys. I have taken issue with a call from an RO more than once. Some fairly infamous. Ask around. I have tried to get a reshoot. I will take a reshoot. If you will give me a reshoot, I will take a reshoot every time. 10 out of 10.
100%.
Every single time. Because if I'm already, if I get a running start, I'm better with a rolling start than I am from a dead stop. So if you let me get like a swing and a miss, the next one is going to be the best I can do. So because I advocate for reshoots quite often, I can say this and it'll be okay. It's like fat people making fat jokes. All right, it's cool because I are one. If you take issue with how something went down, you need at least one person on the squad to come with you. For example, so in USPSA, if you start in the wrong start position, immediate grounds for a reshoot. Homie shot a stage from the wrong start position, got a reshoot. Like legit. And like he had 2 mics on the stage, so he wanted it. All right. Homie takes his reshoot. His reshoot didn't go very well. Tries to advocate that he was in the wrong start position again.
Yes.
So this was
yes.
So we have the 2x2 fault lines on the ground, right? And whoever built the match, God bless their soul, but they put a short piece of 2x2 behind the fault line with the little dots on it. That's usually an indicator of where your feet are supposed to be touching. And for some reason, it was heels. All right, so you kind of had to stand on top of the 2x2 to put your heels on the dots, which was awkward. And so people were doing it, and we had this was a level 1 USPSA match because there's just that few people at it now. And so we were saying, like, if your heels were against the board, you're good. Homie made ready outside and started from outside, so he got his reshoot. And then he was trying to say, like, I think I did toes again. Like, I know, guys, like, I legit. And, like RO was not, and this was a cool group. Like after, this is like the inverse of Timmy's Northwood Showdown for us. Like, I was really excited for the match. Ended up on kind of a wah squad, like energy level wise. Like not a whole lot of joking around, not a whole lot of squad life on this squad. Very dry. This match, I was kind of like, I mean, I love single stacks. I want to shoot it, but I don't know anybody, so it's probably going to be a dud squad also. And I swear, if I brought Taylor with again, if I would have ended up with another dud squad 2 matches in a row that she came to, I think we would have lost her forever. But this squad was lit. These guys were cool. They were just old enough that they could shoot, or they were just young enough that they could shoot, but just old enough that they didn't really care. So they were here for a good time, not a long time.
Yeah.
And so back to homie, guys, I I really, in my heart, believe that I started from the wrong position again. RO, not having it. We were self-ROing too, all right? So this is the kind of match this was. So this is basically like a glorified club match. RO's not having it. Well, hey, you saw it, didn't you? Not having it. What about you? Not having it. Like nobody saw nothing. The best he could get was one guy to say, well, I saw you make ready outside the shooting area, but I didn't see how you started. And so they're like, nah, dude, nah. Like, moving on. Next shooter, blah, blah, blah. And that shooter goes, no, guys, I really think the blah, 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 blah. 2, 3 shooters in, he's still going. This guy was at the top of the stack, right? He's still advocating like he started in the wrong position and nobody's biting. And he's all the way to the end of the squad. Like, the squad is done. We're squad out. We're moving to the next stage. He's like, so what are we going to do about this start position, guys? A few of us were just like, no, and we're walking away. Calls the range master.
Wait, like the whole squad shot through, and then he calls the range master.
Yeah. And like,
nice.
Yeah. And range master comes over, and he's like, he's like, you have video or anything? He's like, nope, no, I don't have any video. I don't have anyone that saw it. I just know in my heart of hearts that I started in the wrong position. And he's just like, nah, man, nah. So guys, if you're gonna fight the good fight, which if you know you're right, I don't necessarily advocate that you don't do, you gotta have at least one alibi. You got to have some video. You got to have somebody that saw it. You got to have somebody on your squad who's like, yeah, man, that didn't go right. Because on that, I think it was actually that same stage or a similar stage. I had shot, there was an activator popper. You came into a port, there was a paper, there was 2 activator poppers and a swinger. Or there was 2 poppers, one was an activator and a swinger. I could have swore I saw one falling down early, like a wind fall. And but it ended up turning out to be a pretty good run. I mean, a little bobble, because you're seeing it in hyper slow motion because you're all jacked up on adrenaline. And I kind of
jacked up on Mountain Dew.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm like, did you see that pop? Taylor for sure saw the popper falling down. But like I asked the other shooters, I'm like, did you see it? And they're like, oh, no, dude, I didn't see that. And I pulled like 2 or 3 guys. Nobody saw it. It was a pretty decent run, and so I left it alone.
Yeah.
And then homie hit. Then we had start position gate, and so like there's the contrast for you. Like you gotta have at least one person coming out on a limb with you if you're gonna argue that you've been wronged. If you can't get at least one alibi, then you're doing some Gary shit, and that's your Gary of the day.
Awesome. Well, Maxwell just broke the record for longest Gary of the day. So good job. Woo! Golf clap.
That's okay. Records are meant to be broken.
Totally fine. Totally fine. I'm sure that one will fall eventually. So today's topic, listener questions. We have quite the stack. Many of these delivered to us in person. Several of them from people that I met in South Carolina at the Tar Heel 3-Gun. A couple just during practice sessions, a couple who are students in a class that I'm doing here in a couple weeks, which by the time this drops will be over. We got a lot of questions, and we're going to do our very best here. Hopefully we make them through all because a couple of these are quite involved. This first one, for example.
For the record, Riser has compiled all these, and I have no idea what he has in store. So whatever you're getting is shooting from the hip.
Yeah, well, some of these are from emails that have been sent to us/you that were then texted to me and copy and pasted into here. So you've seen a couple of these.
Okay.
But
okay.
Yeah. So they're not all fresh. But all right, so here we go, because this one might turn into a whole thing. Can you all look into mental management stuff? I think y'all, this dude used y'all in back-to-back sentences. I like him already. I think y'all touched on it for a minute, but it was a different topic, like nerves, bombing a stage, working through it, things like that. Y'all's, that's his third y'all's way of handling it and ways mentally you approach a match before you get there, when you do, during and after, so we don't sell our guns after getting humbled. Well, you're asking the wrong guy, because I sold my caddies after the shotgun qualifier, so it might not be the guy for you. I know I always want to quit. I did get the money.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Vogel officially paid for it. So thanks, Trav. Love you, buddy.
The end of an era.
It says, I know I always want to quit after every match, but I'll have one good one and it'll bring me back. Because we put so much effort into the sport, and I feel even though there is progress, the mistakes are still killing me. Okay, bye, thanks. So,
okay, bye.
That's what it says. K bye, BYE with actually says K bye, thanks.
This guy's definitely from Carolina.
This guy's definitely from Carolina. Yeah, three L's and a K bye. But I mean, so here's the thing. There's a lot to unpack here. One thing that you need to understand from a very basic level, the better you get in the sport, the more you put into the sport, the higher you finish in matches, the better you think you can do, the worse this gets. I am way more nervous going to a match. Yeah, the more important it gets, so it puts more pressure on you to do well. So if you are at a match where you're like, oh, I hope I beat my buddy Steve, there is X amount of pressure. If you're at a match where you're like, I hope I beat all 250 people here, just multiply that times 100, right? The more you expect out of yourself, the more pressure there is going to be, and the more those mistakes are going to hurt. And sometimes as you get better, the mistakes tend to not be like these really large catastrophic mistakes. But
I guess I got one for you right there. So the match I shot yesterday, I had one scored error. All right. So one mental lapse, the sum total of which dropped me from second place, 97.2% according to Practice Score competitor. It dropped me from second to sixth to just barely staying in the 90th percentile. One target, 0.2 of a second lapse in mental discipline and mental process. At the top, it happens that fast.
Yeah. And so here's the thing. The last match that I shot, the Tar Heel 3-gun, adjusted for total time. This isn't how the scoring works, but because every stage is 100 points and you get a percentage of points and so on and so forth. But so one of the things I like to do is hit the button in Practice Score, which changes the scoring to total time. Adjusted for total time, I was actually the fastest in the match. I got second place in the match at 99.3%. And adjusted for total time, I was actually the fastest by 0.27 seconds. So after 2 whole days of shooting, less than half of a second separated first and second in total time. And then I tended to do better on longer stages relative to short stages. That's why, although my total time was faster, my score was lower and I got second place. So, but I want to point that out because that's an indication of how tight things are. So think about what takes 2.7 seconds. That's a little bobble on a reload. That's one pickup shot on kind of a long plate rack. That's certainly a pickup shot on long range. That's, I forgot to dial up when I got into the prone position and I had to come out of my position and dial and then come back. Not a lot of things take less than 0.27 seconds in our sport, right? So on the very first stage, I mixed up my magazines. I have a process that I've done forever, which I'm going to stop doing because of this, where I load all my mags the night before and then I mark them with rubber bands. So if I have candy cane mags, then I can shoot the right one on the right stage. I got my mags mixed up and I shot all my hoser stuff on the very first stage, bombed the stage, 72% score or something like that. And so one of this guys, I actually have kind of broke this guy's questions out individually. So one of the things is bombing a stage. What do you do when you bomb a stage? So I bombed the stage, and didn't know what had happened until I walked back to the car and then saw the mag sitting there, and then instantly knew like what a catastrophic mistake I had just made. And I flew to this match, rented a car, took 3 days off work, all like the large investment to be here at a match that I have a really good shot at winning. So to just completely shit the bed on the very first stage like that hurts really bad. My reactions to it. At no point did I say fuck any louder than anybody who wasn't in the trunk of my car could have heard. I never threw anything. I never yelled. I never complained to anybody. I did come up to Daniel and be like, dude, you're never going to believe what I just did. And like explain to him like, hey man, like, yeah, I just got my mags mixed up. And he's like, oh man, that sucks. I have had really bad reactions to bombing stages in the past. The more that I do it, the more I understand that these are long matches and a lot of stuff happens. And you kind of have to have goldfish memory for anybody who is a Ted Lasso fan. So goldfish memory, huge benefit in this sport. So the standard thing is you get 5 minutes to be kind of pissy, and then after 5 minutes, you just got to let it go. If you can learn to do that in less than 5 minutes, like the faster you can let it go, the better off you are. If you can get done with whatever just happened and be like, yep, that just happened. I'm going to make a little note in my, for every match, I just pull up my little checklist thing and I make notes for, things I need to work on or things I need to fix or things to change or gear problems that I like, whatever. So when I get home, I can address all the issues. So I make my little note. That's sort of my way of like clearing it. Like, hey, this happened. Figure out a way not to let this happen. The next stage, I put down a stage win. Daniel, who crushed the first stage, forgot to shoot at 4 long-range targets and bombed a stage even more catastrophically than I did. So, he had he not done that, he for sure would have won this match. Like, I did the math on it. For sure would have won the match. Just straight forgot to shoot at 4 targets. Other than like the moment when he realized and he's like, oh no. Like 3 minutes later, you would not have been able to tell that he did anything bad because he's just a happy dude. That's the thing that the more that I do this and the more that I've talked about, first and second tier shooters and all that other shit. Like I'm not winning the pink Mary Kay Cadillac here. So I honestly pulled the same thing off the prize table that I would have pulled had I won. Like there was no actual repercussions other than the piece of wood I got said second instead of first. So really internalizing that and being like, hey, I did that, but everybody else here is going to do something. And like Jerry always says, don't keep digging because you never know how hard the other guy's digging. Like you might have something that you thought was catastrophic. Meanwhile, your competitor 3 stages away is having, like the worst rifle malfunction ever on the long range, and he's about to zero a whole stage. So
right. Well,
after you train wreck something, you just kind of have to power through it.
Well, like we said, it was a couple episodes ago, but like going into day 2 at Timmy's Northwood Showdown, the top of the list, like the top 5 or 6 guys in limited optics all had mics and more than one, so like everybody, especially in multi-gun, which is what we kind of focus on a lot, in multi-gun is the sum total of who struggles the least.
100%.
And what you have to understand about the sport, nothing that happens on stage 1 has anything to do with stage 2 or stage 3 or stage 4. So the reason you have to have goldfish memory, and this translates into life too, but like you got to let that go because you got a whole nother stage. It's just like looking at interim results. Like looking at interim results is super dangerous because there's nothing you can discern from interim results, certainly unless you're at a very, very, very high level, and then it's marginal. But in principle, there's nothing you can determine from interim results that would influence how you're going to shoot the next stage. You need to shoot the next stage the best you can. Period. Like if you know you're falling behind, are you going to shoot it 10% better than you were going to plan to? No. You got to shoot it the best you can do, and you see what that buys at the end. And another thing, because listener used the trade name for it, so he used the term match or mental management. Similar to Kleenex, mental management is a trademarked product, a trademarked system, marketed by Lanny Bassam, who wrote With Winning in Mind. And
Great book.
And
great book.
Also, a licensed facilitator of that is Steve Anderson.
Go for it. I got my
Steve
drink.
Anderson.
I got my drink.
Yep. So you gave me carte blanche permission to talk about Steve Anderson.
I did. I saw it coming, but I figured.
But so one of the things they say is you have to be able to react to adversity without emotion. So if I were just going to coin my own thing here that I just pulled out of my butt while I was listening to Riser talk, I would say if you bomb a stage, like if you legit, like not just a mic, like if you go hard, if you fall on your face hard, I would say every minute that you let that live in your consciousness will drop you 1% on the box, wherever you're at.
Ooh. I can get behind that.
On 1 minute, you can give up 1%. You can give up 2%. That you're gonna fudge that, like Riser said, somewhere else in the match. But if you let it live 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, half a day, all night, that is going you're kind of lighting your match on fire, because depending where you're at in the match, you still have a bunch of stages that have no memory of that error. You don't roll up to the next stage and, oh yeah, there's the guy that did whatever he did. Oh, there's the guy whose rifle went bolt action on him. No, like it's a second chance for romance. Every time you roll up to a new stage, you gotta let you gotta let bygones be bygones, and you gotta move to the next thing. And the longer you let it live in your self-conscious, the more it's gonna eat at you.
Yep, 100%. So the other things that he asked here are nerves and the way you approach mentally, the way you approach before the match, at the match, and after the match. So nerves are, I think, a very individual thing. I think for me, I used to get quite nervous, and as I have done this more and more, I get less nervous on the first stage. Usually the first stage is the only stage I'm actually nervous on, just because you're usually a couple of days post shooting guns, you might be jet lagged, you're not sleeping the way you normally would, all that stuff, so you're just kind of like, how's this going to go? And it always kind of goes like it's going to go, right? It's like nothing ever actually really surprises me, and the more that I do it, the less nerves I have on the first stage. And the way that our sport works, except for super rare circumstances, it's really hard to know if you're walking onto the last stage, if you're like, oh man, if I put down this time, like I'll win this match. Like that's extremely rare, to the point that I think outside of USPSA, multi-gun national super squads, I don't think it's really a thing. Like if you're on the squad with the only other dude or the only other people that are at your level, and you can all win the match, and you actually know what the score is. Yeah, I can see walking up to the last stage and being really nervous when you're like, oh, I might win it if I really lay one down. That knowledge isn't going to help you. Like Maxwell just said, like you're already going to shoot your best stage. The worst thing that you can do is like swing for the fences. I have never seen somebody like, step up to a stage and be like, oh man, I'm going to go for it and do well. Like if you're there, if you're at the top, you're at the top because of the way you've been shooting all day. Keep shooting that way. Don't try to do something special. The same thing if you're there to beat your buddy Steve. You're neck and neck with Steve because of the way you've been shooting. If you try to shoot beyond your ability, your scores will look like you tried to shoot beyond your ability. So for nerves, I mean, like mentally, the whole going in and approaching the match and stuff like that. I do a lot of prep. I try to be practiced up, all this stuff. Oftentimes though, like ironically, a couple of the best matches I've had have been ones where I showed up feeling super unprepared. I actually had a match where there was a match down in Vegas during the UML days where I got my weekends mixed up, and I ended up I was talking to Brian Nelson about something, and he was down at the range, and I was like, all right, cool, man, I'll talk to you next weekend. And as I was hanging up the phone, he's like, wait. And I'm like, what? And he goes, what do you mean next weekend? I was like, next weekend for the match. He's like, you mean tomorrow? And I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? It's next weekend. He's like, dude, I'm at the range right now walking stages. The match is tomorrow. And I like brought up practice score, and I was like, oh shit, I gotta go. And I just like called up my boss really quick. I'm like, hey, that trip I was taking, that got moved up 7 days. I'll talk to you later. Bye. And just like packed the car and drove down there and finished third at UML Multigun Nationals. And I think it was because I showed up being like, oh my God, I can't believe I even made it here in time, instead of being like, I'm super prepared and I'm going to crush everybody. But it's a super individual thing. For the during, man, I just try to have fun. I make notes as I go. So when I have mistakes or I have issues or I'm like, oh, I need to work on this, I'll just make a quick note of it. So that doesn't have to live rent free in my mind for a while. I can just like put it down and get through it. And then after, man, I sit down and I watch on my video. I see where I screwed up. I look at the scores. I see what actually cost me and what I thought cost me, because oftentimes those aren't the same thing. And just make a plan to address all of those things so I'm better at the next one. But like, dude, I've been in the sport since 2013. So that's 12 years. Maxwell's been in it longer than me. And like, nerves are just a part of it. Like you're going to get nervous in some situations, period.
Yeah, I mean, so nerves, excuse me. So nerves are a natural, instinctive thing. That's a survival mechanism from the caveman days. So they're not going away anytime soon. Nerves are a natural reaction to the unknown, right? Like we care about the outcome and we don't know what's going to happen. Right?
Yep.
So that's very natural. What's tricky is how you deal with them, because, and also in our sport, our sport is a bit adrenaline based. It's a bit thrill seeky a little bit. So to some extent, the nerves are what we're here for. The nerves signify that this is important to you and you care about what happens and you want to do well. That's part of the build up to the rush that we're seeking, whether we're aware of that or not. And so I'll depart from the Steve Anderson here and I'll go to the Daniel Horner. Daniel Horner latched onto it. He's like, that the trick to managing the nerves is identifying that you're getting nervous because that thing is about to happen. And so if you recognize that as that's coming on, as that's spooling up, the thing that you're good at and then you're excited about and that you love to do is about to happen, and you recognize that as a natural body instinct before that happens. I'll go ahead and give you a little bit of TMI here. All right, so one of the triggers, staying super hydrated, on the range in the summer, when I'm getting close to time to shoot, I got to pee. For sure. No matter what. Like, doesn't matter how much you plan it, like right before you got to go, got to pee. And even I'm watching Supercross on Saturday night, same thing. They have a porta-john down there because those guys have to go right before they go. Same thing. That's your body's natural reaction to an unknown is spooling up all that stuff. And when you don't recognize it, it's kind of strange and it's kind of an unknown and it builds anxiety. But once you recognize that is what is happening, it starts to be something that you recognize and you're under control of. It's like, oh, this is good. I'm about to do something that I'm really, I'm about to have the rush that I really like and it helps me do great things. So starting to recognize it as it's not like a hex that somebody put on you, and it's not like somebody's got a voodoo doll somewhere stabbing you. It's like that's your natural reaction to an unknown that you care about the result of. So I'll understand that for what it is. And I think if we ever got to a point where we weren't nervous or didn't get nerves before a stage, I would probably quit. Like
Yeah.
Like the
100%.
sport would cease to be exciting to me anymore, right?
Well, and one of the things here that's super interesting is I shoot like absolute crap at local USPSA matches because I don't care. I'm like, it's not my sport. I'm just kind of there hanging out with my buddies. I shoot like absolute crap. I mean, sometimes I'll lay one down, but I shoot poorly because I'm not nervous. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me if I do good. Like, being nervous is a good thing. It will help you pay attention. It will help you prepare correct. If you're super nervous, you know what super helps that? Just like sit there and run through your stage plan. And so when you actually step up to the light, that thing is on lock. Like you're not going to make any mistakes.
Yeah, recognizing that energy and being able to channel it somewhere, that's the pro move.
Yep.
Before, during, and after, again, you mentioned mental management by name. And so mental management.
Also, so you should definitely go by With Winning in Mind. It's very
Yes.
cheap. It's on paperback. It is
Yes.
a fantastic book. I've read it like 3 times. It's very good.
Yes. So mental management, the product, is a process before, during, and after. And the quick version of it, so we can move on to other stuff. Essentially, Olympic level gold medalist athlete. Boiled down a process for how Olympic athletes do what they do. And really quick, essentially, if you could ask Olympic athletes at the top level what they're thinking about when they do the thing, invariably, most of them would tell you nothing or not very much. The catch of nothing is that you can't actively think of nothing. Someone out there who's clever is like, oh, I can't. No, you can think about what you're not supposed to think about. You can't actively just turn your brain off and just be like you can't just have nothing.
I take it your tinnitus isn't there yet. Give it time; it'll come.
So, what you can do, and like say, a lot of times I talk about this in law enforcement a lot too, because they'll be like, they talk in the negative. All right, don't do this. Whatever you do, don't do this. The human brain doesn't think in the negative, just like it doesn't think you can't think of nothing. You can actively choose to think of something else, right? If I say pumpkin, you have to deal with the image of an orange gourd in your head, at least for a moment in time. You can dismiss it immediately if you don't enjoy that idea, but when I say that, I put that in your head, and you have to deal with it. So mental management is essentially the process of how do we create a replicatable system to have a consistent mental pattern when we step up to a stage. So we can't actively think of nothing and not care. If you didn't care about the result, you wouldn't travel all the way across the country, spend all the money, and do this sport. All right, so you're there. It matters to you on some level, but you have to mentally get to a place that is similar to I'm not thinking, and I don't care. And that is the process. If you read With Winning in Mind, if you read Steve Anderson's books, if you listen to his show, that's what they're talking about there. How do we build a system that we consistently get good results from mentally, and how do we replicate it on demand? And that is a before, middle, and after process. For me, that cliff notes of that would be things like we've talked about before in the Major Match the Major Match podcast. All right, for me, that whole process starts when I leave for the match. All right, I pack all my stuff. I have a certain way I want it packed, certain things I want to bring with, even though some of those things I've never used in years. But you might need them, so I bring them with. So arrive at the match early. I have a thing. I have to see all the stages. I don't have to digest them all, but I have to see them all. All right, so I know what's out there. And then I try to write down a stage plan, right? Riser uses video. I write it on paper. All right, have some kind of digested plan. So when I roll up to the stage, it's not the first time I've thought about it. If you have 5 minutes to break down a stage, spend 1 minute planning and 4 minutes memorizing. I have a system for where the loaded ammo is, where depleted mags go, when do I clean mags, when do I clean guns, when do I lubricate guns, all the rituals around all that stuff. And then after is the most important part. And I'm not even it's a secret weapon. Like, I'm not, if everybody did this, I would be a lot farther down the list, but most people are lazy and won't do it. After you shoot, you have to replay what happened in your head and record those lessons learned. What went well? What do you need to learn? What do you need to improve on? What am I looking for solutions to? You need to document all that stuff and solidify it in your head. What went well? Log that as a success and keep building. That's probably the journaling piece of it. Is the most important part, and it's often of the actual mental management system. It is the part that is, according to Steve, is the least followed part of the system. And people try to shortcut it all the time. People ask him, and he'll say this on his show, like, yeah, Steve, like, I'm a grandmaster, I'm a national champion. Do I really need to do the journal? And he'll say, well, would you do anything to win? Oh, yeah, I would do anything. Well, if you don't do it and you don't win, then you're going to know that you didn't do everything you could possibly do to win. Can you live with that? No, I guess not. They do the journal. Lanny Basham himself, he won't let you hire him. He won't take your money. I think it's $500 an hour if you don't do the journal. If you can't hand him a performance journal, he won't even take you as a client. That's how important it is.
All right, next question. This is going to be a long one. That was a half hour. Next question. Hey, I listen to your podcast a lot, and I have a question I hope you can answer in your next episode. Height over bore. What are the potential pros and cons of having a taller riser? By the way, tall riser is an oxymoron. On your rifle, just like those GBRS risers. When it comes to practical shooting, I'm trying to settle a debate with the group chat and stay unbiased. I won't say which side I'm on. I like this guy. My answer, in general, taller risers are more comfortable to shoot when you are standing. Shorter risers are more comfortable to shoot when you're prone. Mid-height risers are slightly uncomfortable for both, but not really as comfortable for either. And the reality of the situation is it does not really matter. If you have a lot of height over bore, you can compensate for that with different zeroing strategies or holdover practices. All of those things can win. I like about a 1.5. Maxwell shoots a 1.9. Horner's gone all over the place. He shot a super tall, like 2 and change during the Three Gun Nation shoot off days and went back to like a scope right over the bore type deal. In my opinion, it does not really matter. Shoot the one that you like the most, unless you shoot in Texas where every stage has 3 minutes of prone shooting, in which case I probably wouldn't go with a super tall one.
Yeah, that. I get asked this a lot, and here's what you got to remember. We're talking about differences that at the extremes were inside a half an inch. Look at a half inch on a tape measure. You're inside of that. Like when you say the numbers, when you say 1.5, 1.7, 1.9, 205, which are the common heights, it seems like we're talking about big gaps. I mean, you're between the sizes that most people are debating between, you're talking about less than a quarter of an inch. And for competition purposes, if you go back to that episode, we're zeroing at 1 to 200 yards. You're inside of, the difference in this, you're inside of mechanically the accuracy of your rifle. All right? For gas gun ARs, especially if you didn't buy a JP Cryo Match barrel or a Proof or whatever you're into, if you didn't spend the big nut for a really, really good barrel and really, really good ammo, the limitation on your point of impact is not your sight height, whatever variance that would be, and it's less than 1/4 of an inch, right? Your bullets are going to fly more variation than that. And the dude behind the gun is probably not that accurate too. Now, there are dudes who are, but I'm saying for as much time as spent debating about this, it's not even in the top 10 of variables that can throw your shot the most.
I don't even think it's in the top 50.
Not even in the top 50.
Yeah.
What is super important, though, is that your rifle fits you. All right? So, like, perfect fit. Like, I don't think enough attention is paid to actually properly fitting a carbine stock to a shooter.
Not even close.
Even close.
So I have, I have an awkward build in that I'm a very small person, and I also have, it turns out, a very bony face structure. I'm willing to bet real money that Maxwell cannot look through the scope of my rifle without getting scope shadow.
No, we did it at the team match. I ended up shooting your gun.
That's right.
It was super jacked up.
Yeah, it was jacked because he couldn't cheek my gun because I have very high cheekbones. So I run a very high rear cheek riser relative to my scope height. And when I loan my gun out, I have to like drop the riser out of the way so other people can shoot the thing.
Yeah. So properly fitting your rifle for whatever your application is, and like a lot of times I'm talking to law enforcement people. So like if you're setting up a gun for an assaulter role, all right, if you're on a full-time SWAT team and all you do is hit houses and do CQB, set the gun up for that. If on the flip side, kind of like Riser is saying for Texas 3-gun championship or anything in North Carolina, you're probably going to spend a lot of time on your belly or bagged up or on a bipod. All right, that's a fundamentally different shooting position than an isosceles run and gun position. Now, in the course of the sport, you're going to have to do both, but if you have to hedge, which one do you spend more time doing? And you kind of have to play with the other. When I first started the sport, some well-intentioned advice that I don't use anymore was that you always set the rifle up for prone, because prone is, where you win and lose the match, which is true. But a gun that's really set up for prone shoots kind of crappy for some of the other stuff. So you kind of have to gauge how much prone shooting are you doing versus other stuff and how much of a hindrance is it. So the heights, really where the heights matter. Again, remember, you're zeroing at like 100 or 200 yards. And your bullet is going to is getting close to your line of sight.
Yeah, I mean, for a really high riser versus a mid height, not a lot of people run the really, really short ones. I think everyone's kind of running like 145 or higher. Yeah. Just because mechanically there has to be a certain amount of because it is like a cantilever offset mount there. It's really hard to build one of those and make the scope really close to the rifle. If you are point blank, which is where your mechanical offset is maximum, like AMAX said, you are talking, this is the difference. Like, let's say a hard USPSA or a 3-gun target where you have a no shoot directly underneath the head box. This is the difference between, do I put my dot on the top of the target or on the top of the perf on the top of the A zone? This is the difference we're talking about. We are talking extremely small distances at a target that doesn't present itself very often.
Yeah. It really, if you shoot it on paper, it starts to disappear at 10 to 15 yards. Mm-hmm. To where if you had all the systems side by side, so you could see what the offset looks like, they would start to blend together and you would not be able to tell the difference at about 10 yards. Milspec Mojo did a video on YouTube like that. So I think they were specifically talking about the GBRS Hydra. And if you look at a product like that, some of it is sizzle, right? Especially everything around GBRS is sizzle, because they were very high level operators. They have all the all the vet bro stuff that goes around with all of that. And they came out with a product. Now, they came out with a product that they probably wished they would have had operationally back in the war. And now they came out with a product. They're trying to market a product. All right. So, yes, they're going to put some energy behind it. But you also got to recognize what that product is for. All right. That product is for passively aiming through night vision and using infrared lasers with night vision. How much of that are you doing? If you're doing it quite a bit, it's probably a good product that you should buy. If not, it's not really for you. And I don't throw any shade at it because it's a specialized product for a specialized niche that they probably actually see some value in. But to throw it on a rifle because you think it's cool, well, I mean, if you think it's cool, Nut and Fancy said second kind of cool is like a free pass. That's fine. But oh man, there's an old one for you. I don't know if anybody knows what Nut and Fancy is anymore. But it's for a specific purpose. And if that purpose isn't what you're doing, then it's probably not for you. And you're not any better or worse of a person for using it. Like Riser said, I primarily use 193. I will use some 17 on more of those DMR type rifle setups for the longer range matches. And I kind of jump back and forth between those two. But I'll use those two more often than not, given the choice. And for stand-up isosceles shooting, I think most people, except really, really small statured, like anyone related to Riser or Asians, Filipinos, really small Hispanic dudes, or on the other end of the spectrum, if you got some serious back and neck injuries and you can't turtle your neck, if you got to go prone on one of those and you physically don't have the range of motion to get there, that's something to consider. But it's more important that the carbine is comfortable for you and that the optic appears in front of your face and in your vision effortlessly and naturally than it is what height that is. Some combination of scope height and stock dimension is going to do that. And as long as you naturally cheek the gun and the scope is there, that's what's more important than whatever height you pick.
100%. All right, this one ties in pretty well. Maybe a question for On the Perf, but I am shooting the Parma High Desert Championship. Woo! That is, as of this recording, I think 3 weeks away, something like that. So this will come out in time for that. It will be my first major 3-gun match. Fuck
Jesus.
Yes, dude. Man, please find me at this match and tell me that this is your question.
Start hydrating now.
I want to high five you. That you're gonna have a blast. This is gonna be so awesome. My first major was at that same range, and it was the predecessor to this match. So I know what you're about to go through, and it's gonna be a giant kick in the nuts, but it is gonna be super fun.
The rest of the sport will suck after that.
Yeah, it's gonna be a letdown. All right, what 2 to 3 abnormal shooting positions would you practice, i.e., prone, sideline, etc.? You might be a little let down, I think, because I don't think I've done anything super weird at this match. And if Aaron listens to this, he's going to do some super messed up shit. I know he will. By the way, Aaron, don't make us shoot rifles in doghouses again. That sucked. At one point you had to shoot under. So this wasn't actually this match. This is hard as hell, but you had to shoot underneath a car with a rifle, and the car had 4 flat tires. And so it was like a urban prone where you're prone, but your rifle is cockeyed to the side. Quick pro tip: if your rifle is cockeyed, hold in the direction of your magazine.
Well, yeah. So that rollover position, but also before you move off that, shooting prone really close to the dusty ground.
Yep.
Just get a taste of what your rifle's going to do when it shoots that close to the dirt. Because your sight picture disappears.
That's a really good point. Yeah, you can't do anything about it, but be ready for it.
If you can do anything about it, don't let that be the first time you experience it.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. But that's kind of it. Probably a good idea to practice shooting left-handed a bit.
I would say VTAC walls. I would say,
Yeah.
like your reverse kneels and whatnot off of like the wobbly VTAC walls. I would say that's.
Well, I wouldn't say that that's an awkward shooting. I mean, the bread and butter is standing supported, double kneel, reverse kneel, prone.
Yeah.
Like those are basically the positions, and if you can shoot those positions well, you're gonna do fine.
Yeah.
If there's some super weird position, I wouldn't it's we've talked about this before on the show where people will see like, oh my god, this match has a flying clay that you have to shoot with a pistol, and so they'll practice flying a shooting clay with a pistol for 2 months, and they forget to practice shooting. It's like if you're just good at shooting, you'll be fine with whatever they throw at you. Like in the Ironman days, we could never practice shooting off a zip line or shooting while driving a golf cart, but we all did kind of okay at it because we were just good at shooting. And then we just applied good shooting to whatever weird position we were thrown into.
I would say what's really challenging about that match that you would maybe want to practice is just the amount of shit that you have to wear. Like carrying that much ammunition. Yeah. How do you shoot a rifle while you have a full bandolier of shotgun shells? You know, or like if you need to bring more than your standard loadout, where are you going to put them and can you reach them? I think the challenge was always the challenge was always like how do I carry all this stuff and still shoot? You know, and how do I make sure that my rifle mags are still on me when I get to that part after shooting a bunch of shotgun and a bunch of pistol?
Yep. Yeah, so the quick pro tip that I'll throw down here before you leave this topic, so this doesn't turn into a Parma episode, because I have the feeling it might.
Lord knows we would.
Yeah. Or when you get to a stage, do not pull your guns out of your bag and put them in the rack.
Absolutely
Leave your guns
not.
in the bag.
Absolutely
Your
not.
guns come out of the bag, then you zip your bag closed, then you shoot the stage, then your guns go back in the bag. Parma has the gun-destroyingest dirt on earth, and if you leave your guns out, it will destroy your guns. Yeah. So do not leave them out of the bag for 1 second longer than they have to be.
Yeah, it's dust. It's like it feels like powdered sugar.
Yeah, it's just straight moon dust.
Yeah, but somehow it's gritty. I don't know how. It doesn't feel gritty, but it is. The other lesson learned hard at that match is don't let your ammo sit in the sun.
Yep.
Or like in your car where your car turns like to 200 degrees, like legit, it's worth putting your ammo in a cooler at that match. That time of year in the high desert, that's, your shotgun shells they don't melt. Like it's not like they turn into Hershey's chocolate and just disappear.
They just get soft. They try to be not round anymore.
Yeah, and they do weird things, and they just do less weird things if they come from a cooler.
Yeah, 100%.
So yeah, it's that kind of stuff. Obviously, long range. I mean, you got to have your long range game to do well at that match. Have plenty of long range ammo. But it's not the shenanigans. It's more the volume of it and the targets themselves. I mean, the targets themselves it's more the mirage and the wind and honestly your physicality, like just managing your nutrition and your hydration to be in that environment for that amount of time is what makes otherwise easy shooting fairly difficult.
Yep, 100%. All right, next question. This one is from a dude in South Carolina who sent me a question on YouTube, and I gave him a slightly flippant response. He basically asked, like,
did he say y'all more than three times?
He did not. His question originally was, how do you train for 3-gun? And I was like, that's like asking how an airplane works. And so I pointed him towards a few things, but I met him at the match, and then he asked me a way better question, which is, what drills would you do for each platform if you had 50 rounds for each? Would you do a progression of drills leading up to a major match, or would they stay the same? I'll answer the second part first. Progression of stuff leading up to a major match. Generally speaking, I start the season with a lot of what people would call basics or fundamentals. Draws, reloads, recoil control, position entry, all those. Like, I just drill home some really basic stuff. As I get closer to matches, I tend to do things that I'm going to see in the match more. So if I'm shooting a UML match from back in the day, probably not going to spend a lot of time on long range. I'm going to spend a ton of time on gun transitions and tight positions and shooting on the move and the things that I'm going to see at that match. If I'm going to shoot Parma, for example, I'm going to spend a ton of time on positional rifle work, aggressive shotgun. I'm going to make sure that I can shoot slugs out to 80 yards. I'm going to work on the things that I will work for a major match. And then right towards the end, my last couple of practice sessions, I no longer am practicing to get better. I am practicing to maintain a level that I have acquired. So my last couple of practice sessions before a major match, there's going to be no, I'm going to swing for the fences on this drill and see how blurry I can shoot and still hook up. I'm not going to be doing that kind of stuff anymore. It is going to be, I'm going to go shoot this 500 round practice session like I am shooting a match. I'm going to see just enough sight picture. I'm going to shoot just aggressively enough. I'm going to shoot at 98% the entire time and get used to that sensation of this is how I shoot in match mode before I go to a match. That's kind of like my progression. And then I actually came up with a few specific drills here that are a little bit more generic, but ones that I have used quite a bit. What do you do? Do you have a progression of drills that sort of like leads up to a match, or do you just practice sort of the same style all the time and then head out?
Could you reread the part about 50 rounds?
Yeah. So, well, I'll get to that one in a second. I'm doing it backwards.
Okay. So I guess similar to what Riser's saying is I'm trying to stay sharp on the fundamentals of the platforms or the more prevalent platforms for the match in my more immediate future. And then I would say, not to rehash the whole thing, and Riser's process is probably more elaborate than mine, but I start to narrow down on known match challenges, right? So I've been shooting single stack all winter. I plan to shoot factory gun nationals from concealment. So now that I am past the single stack classic where I was not going to shoot from concealment, known match challenges, I'm going to start shooting more from appendix. I'm dry fire more from appendix. I'm going to live fire more from appendix. Also, as you come out of winter, like for me, I've been traditionally the last couple of years working on classification goals. Starts to transition into match skills, match movement. So it starts to be a lot more movement based, entry and exit from a position in different angles, different arrays. Like Riser and I actually trained together when I was out by him. And you had these like two, we'll call them cone-like things, that he would just move around. He would shoot an array, bop, bop, bop. He had 3 targets up, set them up one way, position A, position B. He'd move them around. Position A, position B, flip them, reverse them, inverse, planted and shooting on the move. Just variations of that stuff. And it's more important to kind of keep it fresh and applying to something evolving than it is to memorize the one thing. A lot of us, I think, and I'm myself included, really get in a rut of like, all right, I locked onto this drill that I really like and I want to get it to this certain level. And then like you wake up and it's 4 weeks later and you've been doing the same drill for the whole time. So
Yep.
It starts fundamentals, try to keep the fundamentals sharp until essentially, to me, a match comes over my horizon, like it's starting to be more in my conscious. Then I transition into known match challenges that I'm trying to get ready for.
Yep. So the first part of this question, which we're answering second, is what drills do you do for each platform if you had 50 rounds for each? So these aren't the only drills that I do, but these are bread and butter drills that I do a lot. So one drill is, and so when I go out and I'm practicing, it is very, very rare that I will set up more than 3 targets. I will usually set up 2 targets or sometimes 1 target. Because I want to be able to drive out to the range, have whatever I'm doing on the ground in like 10 minutes, practice and leave and be home for dinner. So the first one I do, which I do a lot for Outlaw 3-gun matches, because there's a lot of, like Rocky Mountain style where you're like running through the woods and then there's just like 2 pieces of steel off in the woods and then you leave that position again. And it's usually reasonably hard shooting. I will set up a drill where I'll have 2 pieces of steel, 8-inch round, static plates, and I'll have 3 cones. Cone number 1 is at 20 yards. Cone number 2 is at 15 yards and probably like 10 yards off to the right or the left. Cone number 3 is at 10 yards and back towards the middle again. And the drill is start at cone number 1 at 20 yards, draw, shoots 2 pieces of steel, run to cone 2 at 15 yards, which has some lateral movement in it, shoots 2 pieces of steel, run to cone 3 at 10 yards, shoots 2 pieces of steel. So this has a lot of stuff in it all at the same time. If you execute perfectly, it's 6 rounds per. And so you are shooting, from a draw at 20-yard, 8-inch steel, which is, a reasonably hard shot to do at speed. Like we could all just stand there and do it slowly, but the point is to do it fast. And then you have you need some recoil control because you are shooting a second piece of steel. And then there is also a small target transition in there as well. If you want to be really mean, you'll put those 2 pieces of steel quite far apart from each other. And then you have a position exit on steel, which is a good place to do what I like to call the Miss Popper dance, which is when you send the shot and you pull it because you started the movement too early, and then you have to run back to that cone and re-engage the piece of steel. Then you have a position entry with more steel shooting, another position exit, another position entry, and then you also have kind of a throttle change in there too, because the way, if you're shooting appropriately for each position, you should be shooting a little bit faster in each position as well, because you need less sight confirmation, less trigger control, from 10 yards than you do from 20 yards. So I shoot that drill a ton. That is my go-to pistol drill. What's your go-to pistol?
I'm not really drill centric. So I don't have, like, off the top of my brain, I don't have one like Riser just described, or like, oh yeah, I like this drill and I do this one. I'm more actively troubleshooting skill sets, and so I try to figure out a drill that works that skill set. And that's a moving target over time. One thing I did latch on to, because I'm not overly drill creative, Hunter Constantine threw one up that's his warm-up drill. He starts with a head box, a USPSA head box at 10 yards, and he tries to do it draws. He tries to do draw to a single shot, so for 10 repetitions, and get them all in the head box. I think he actually does it all in the A zone, but most of the time when I'm doing this, I'm doing it with iron sights, so I just go ahead and give myself the whole A box. But 10 presentations to a single shot, all in the head box, and essentially that's his warm-up drill. And so he doesn't allow himself to start the rest of his training until he gets that clean. And so I started doing that too as kind of a warm-up drill. It seemed sufficiently hard, and usually, like this week, I think it took me, I think the best I did it was 4 tries. 4 tries to get it all the way through. And if you throw one, you still got to go all the way through. So if you throw the third shot, you still got to shoot the rest of them. But 10 draw presentations to a head box is how I start a lot of my pistol stuff. And then the rest of it is kind of improvised. Another one I like to do is we have we have some of the 4x4 USPSA shooting boxes, the wood 2x2s. At the range. Yep. And so one of my moving drills, essentially I just plop one of those down on the floor and I try to move sides. So, start from the back, move to the front, shoot from the back all the way, shoot to, then run to the front, like it was a fault line, like the middle is lava kind of thing. And then I'll do, side to side, I'll do corner to corner, kind of moving around those axes. It's not as sexy for Instagram, but like it's more important to be crisp on the entries and the exits than it is to be moving a great distance of speed super fast and shooting along the way. I use one of those boxes to kind of hone entries and exits. That's another one that I do fairly often. But the actual drills that I do, they're honestly a moving target all the time.
Yep. So for for rifle stuff, man, I mean, for the matches that I shoot, positional rifle work is most of what I practice for the rifle. Like as soon as I have kind of like standing recoil control dialed and I feel good about it for the season, which that's a bullshit statement. I never feel good about it for the season, but like as long as I know that's on point, I will spend all of my ammo doing positional rifle practice. So I will put up, generally speaking, what I use is a 3-inch steel plate. I got a KYL rack from Targets USA. Best piece of gear that I own for rifle practice because you can shoot the living hell out of it. It's super simple to set up, and I just throw it down at 100 yards. So that gives you like a whole array of different plate sizes. So as you get better at this, you can change plate sizes. And then I will just do positional rifle work, and literally like if I just have one position, it'll just be like on the buzzer into the position, break a shot, hit the plate, and then have a good recoil control that my rifle returns right to the plate. So I see the impact, everything's super clear. If I need to send a follow-up shot, I can just send it. I actually have a number written down that's kind of like my target time. I think it's 3.5 seconds for like step into the position, build it, and break the shot regardless of what the position is. And then so at the range there's usually some props around that I can kind of use, but I have a Vortex Radian tripod, which is what I use for this because it's the most stable of them. And I actually just have about a 2-foot chunk of 2x6 with an Arca rail screwed to the bottom, so I can just clamp it to the tripod, and then I can build whatever height position I want. So I can make it slanted one way or the other, or cockeyed or square, or standing or double kneel, reverse kneel, or like a super low, like weird funky prone or whatever. And I just like step to that, build my position, break the shot, do a few reps of those. If I feel like it's too easy, I'll shoot at a smaller target. And then once I feel like I have that position, it's feeling really good on entry, I'll change it to a different height and do the same thing. Or if I have a few props handy, I'll go from prop to prop to prop, doing the same sort of thing. And then, maybe even like throwing some prone in there or something like that.
I'll agree with most of that. I really need to build on that more. But like we were talking about in the 22 episode, I did do a fair amount of 22, and that was just like Riser was saying, positional and learning holds. If I'm straight up though, aside from all that 22 stuff we talked about, rifle ammo is some of the most expensive and some of the hardest to get for me, and the guns get super hot. So practice time on the rifle is not super productive for me, so I don't do it a whole lot. I'm fortunate that in my job, I shoot rifles quite a bit for the subject that I teach, and most of the practice I have on centerfire rifles is teaching classes, if I were straight up. But if you have resources, what Riser's talking about is what I would do.
So the last one, shotgun. If I have 50 rounds of shotgun, I'm going to spend the first 25 rounds of those patterning my shotgun. A disturbingly large amount of people do not know what their shotgun patterns with different chokes. So 5 chokes, 5 distances, that's 25 rounds. Past that, I'm going to just make sure that my slugs hit. Daniel Horner years ago did a hilarious video about slug practice, and he's like, all right, we're out here for our intense slug practicing day. Here's the first thing, we got to target at 40 yards, blah, blah, blah. And he squares up and he goes, pating, 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 and we're done. And that was the video. And I was like, yep, if your slugs hit where they think they hit, as Brian Nelson says, just shoot it like a big dumb PCC. After that, what I've been working on lately is shotgun on the move. We are now at a point in the progression of the sport where you can no longer shoot shotgun by running to a position, shooting the things, running to the next position, shooting the things. If you want to do well, you basically have to be able to shoot shotgun on the move. I'm not very good at it. I'm not as good as I'd like to be. I was quite disappointed that James Gill, despite having one leg, shoot shotgun on the move way better than I do. He doesn't shoot shotgun on the move good for a guy with one leg. He just shoots shotgun on the move really, really well. And I honestly have no idea how he does it, but he is a savage. And I'm just like looking down at my two little working nubs here being like, I need to get better at this.
His hate keeps him warm.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. You got what's your go-to shotgun?
My go-to shotgun, again, somewhat resource limited for that. More range access than ammo. But years ago I latched on to Keith Garcia's plate rack drill. You know, he had a plate rack and he'd like shoot 1, load 4, shoot 2, load 4, shoot.
Oh yeah.
You know, and he had it figured out. Like you could basically, it was shooting enough shells out of the gun that he could get through a whole plate rack, and he ended up with like a full gun. But he practiced as many loads as he could, and then mounting back up to a shot. That's normally
it was
what
like,
I do.
I think it would start with 2.
Yeah.
And then you shoot 1, load 4, shoot 2, load 4, shoot 2, load 4, shoot 1.
Yeah, something like that.
Pretty sure that was it. Yep. Because
And then-
I did that a bunch.
And then, like Reiser said, add on the move, because John Waddell and Varric Bizey have essentially elevated the game to, well, and AJ Anthony, have elevated the game to shooting from a dead run. So, like,
Yeah.
you got to bring it on their level.
Not on the move like your body's moving.
Yeah,
on the move
not
like
on the
you're
move.
running through
Yeah.
the woods, not shooting anything,
Yeah.
but you're shooting stuff.
Yeah, like
Yep.
like the brakes are out on your Tesla. All right, you just got to
Yep.
keep going. So
So,
like adding that in there, and
Couple quick things backing up just a touch. Like Maxwell said, ammo is super expensive, especially rifle ammo, and the guns get hot. PCCs are a great stand-in for all rifle practice. I highly recommend it if it's an option for you.
well, and so like the 50 rounds is like I only have 50 rounds to get ready for this match, or like I have 50 rounds for a range session. Did we ask it that specifically?
No, we do not know that specifically.
Okay, because straight up, if I only had 50 rounds to practice, I wouldn't shoot them. I would zero the guns, and like the thing is like the logistics of getting to the range.
Yeah, it's probably not worth all the effort to get out there to shoot 50 rounds and leave.
Yeah. So like even like pistol and rifle that's on the campus that I work on, still, at the end of the day, to go down there to get the stuff out, to get the guns out, to turn the ventilation system on, to hang the target up, I'm not doing it for 50 rounds. Like it's
Yep.
not worth the your time is better spent at home dry firing. Or if the question was 50 rounds per session, I would consolidate the number of sessions. I would rather do one 200 round session than spool up all that logistics, all that, all that time, money, whatever, relationship equity. Like I would pool that all into one session instead of a bunch of little bites.
100%.
But I would be, if that is your situation, and probably when I was the most successful in my career, I was limited to resources that way, I would be unforgiving on the dry fire schedule. But the live fires schedule, you do the best with what you can. Nobody has as much as they want. But yeah, making sure that your stuff is dialed and ready to go right before the match is number one. And a lot of times, I mean, you'll burn up 50 rounds just trying to get a hard zero on a rifle at 200 yards. If you're really chasing it, you're really putting down 5-shot groups.
Yep.
So,
Yep. But the other the thing that I remembered, and I thought this was really funny, so I'd throw it in. Keith Garcia, when he was posting up all those videos, remember he'd always post up like, "Oh, I came up with this new drill," and he'd post a video and put up the time, and then people would all struggle to beat it, and finally somebody would struggle to beat it. I have not confirmed this from Keith, but I heard the second hand from somebody who said he heard it from Keith. So I'm going to go with 80% probability, because what Keith would do is when somebody would beat it, immediately Keith would post another video beating their time. And as far as I can tell, and Keith does listen to the show, so Keith, please reach out and let me know if this is true. But I'm pretty sure that Keith would film a bunch of runs, and he would post his second best run and keep the first one in the back pocket. So when somebody beat his time, like 3 minutes later, he would just put that thing on YouTube and be like, "Oh man, sorry, I was out at the range this afternoon and I took you down. My bad."
Man, even if Keith denies it, I don't know if I'd believe him. Well, you got to remember about Keith at that time. I'm not sure what his current situation is. I think he retired. But at that time, he was like the range master for his police department. And it was a big police department. So like his full-time job was on, around, or near the range. So he had like, again, time and access to go out and burn that stuff down all the time. And like the reason you can see it was on a police range. The reason he was shooting a plate rack is because there was a plate rack right there and he didn't have to set it up. You know, like the logistics of making that all happen. Same thing, like the original question was 50 rounds per gun. If
I
would
almost never go to the range with 3 guns. I rarely go to the range with 2 guns.
And
the only reason I will go to the range with 2 guns if I am having a mechanical issue with a gun that I need to solve and I'm there to practice with a different gun. I will never go practice with 2 guns.
Yeah. Well, and the pistol is the hardest, the most perishable, and also the easiest to practice. I would take that allocation of ammo and I would double down on the pistol and because
also the cheapest.
Yeah, also the cheapest. So really what we're working on live fire is hand-eye coordination. That translates. As long as you are used to handling all the guns and you're used to what they do, like I by far put more mileage on a pistol live fire than I do the other guns. Like
comfortably,
it's not even
comfortably
close.
90% of my live fire practice is pistol.
Yes, 100%.
Like without breaking a sweat
for a variety of reasons that we've touched on.
Yeah, for all the reasons. If you guys do another QA episode, I'd like to hear your thoughts on barrel/tube clamps on shotguns and what mag length. The +9 I had on my Stoker gives me 14 on my 1301, and it's got me thinking about both topics. Clamps. Magazine capacity first. You need to be able to load 4 rounds off the buzzer, period. If you're in a restricted capacity division. Does modified start full?
Yeah.
Okay. So if modified starts full, do whatever makes sense. But I would say certainly for TAC, and I mean, I would think the same thing for modified basically. If your capacity is 8+1, you need a tube that holds 12. So you can load 4 off of the buzzer. You want your loads to be divisible by 4. For modified, I think everyone's kind of running the same thing. I'm sure a couple people have an extra shell, but
basically 12 as long as you can go.
Yeah, the guns get. Oh yeah, an actual like IPSC modified.
The rule is 12 is as many as you can have.
Oh, for modified in the States as well.
Yep, because we mirrored those rules.
Oh, cool. All right, well then there you go. So 12 in the tube. If you're shooting TAC, 13, and that's the end of that discussion. Clamps. If your gun reacts well to a clamp,
so
go for it.
If you can go longer, like if you're talking about listeners talking about a 14-inch or 14-round tube, what you have to understand is your gun is huge. Okay.
Yeah.
That thing's a monster. All right. Make your own jokes. And you're also asking a lot from that spring. Like you are at like the limit of what that spring can do to deliver. Think about it. You have essentially if we were to just use round numbers, because I hate math, a shell is basically an ounce. So when you have a full tube, you basically have a pound of shells in there to move. And you're asking one coil spring to move all those around. And there's recoil, so they're going back and forth. You're asking a lot of a piano wire spring to push all that far. So you don't see very many 14-round tubes even where they would be legal because they're not necessarily reliable.
Yep.
Keep that in mind.
Yep. Very valid point. Clamps, I don't care. I didn't have a clamp on my Stoeger because I got weird slug impact shift problems with clamps. I do have a clamp on my Benelli because I do not. There is nothing free-floated about a tube shotgun, whether you have a clamp or not. I don't think it makes any difference. I think it just kind of depends on the tube that you have. If you have a tube that requires it, use it. If you have a tube that doesn't, it's up to you.
So when I first started, and to this day, one of my very good friends, Mr. Ryan Muckenhern, but one of the guys I started shooting with, he actually worked at Nordic Components at the time. This was pre-Briley. This was not Briley the company, but Briley Tubes. This was pre-TACCOM. This was they were the tube, basically, at the time. And so they made the clamp. What you had to understand about the clamp is they had a tubes of various lengths, and then they were modular to the nut. So the tube would thread into the nut, so you would get the tube and nut combination for whatever shotgun you were going to. What customers would do, because it's intuitive, they would screw that tube into the nut, give it an ugga-dugga to snug it up. Then they would put it on the shotgun, ugga-dugga, and then they would clamp it. And now if that tube wasn't straight in the nut, like just stacking tolerances of manufacturing, if it wasn't straight, so the clamp was actually like pulling the tube towards the barrel, that was putting tension on the barrel. And so that is where people would have issues, especially slugs, depending on how cockeyed that thing was and how much torque you had on there. That would tension the barrel, causing a point of aim shift. Now, if you were consistent, if you tightened it the same every time you took it on and off, it was repeatable. But do people do that? No, they don't. So that is where we get. So you would have a guy ugga-dugga it on one time, and today he had his Wheaties, and tomorrow he didn't, and you would get different tensions on there, and they would start to see point of impact shifts. This was the customer service nightmare at Nordic Components. So essentially what they would tell you to do is, if you wanted to use a clamp, you would thread the tube into the nut loosely. You wouldn't snug it all the way down. It would just be free floated in there. And there was a ton of threads. There was like an inch of fine thread. So the thing was in there, but the tube was kind of loose, and then you would put the clamp on, and that would kind of mate the two together, essentially bringing the tube to the barrel, not the barrel to the tube. That created less issues and was far more consistent. And I used a clamp for a long time. But also, however, they basically determined, it was one of those things where people are like, well, that thing's sticking out there a long way, and Winchester 94s have a clamp on them, so we probably need a clamp on there. But it turns out like nobody ever really broke one under normal use. So eventually they just started saying, you don't really need it to hold the tube up. A lot of times dudes would put them on there so they would have like a sling mount point for their slings, because at that time you had to sling shotguns too. So it was a good place to mount a sling. But really kind of evolved into, we don't need those. And then the heavier tubes would come along, like the TACCOMs. Those things were basically like hollow baseball bats that had a spring in them. And then the carbon tubes came. Like, I think one of the biggest innovation, like, I was, from Minnesota. I'm a, Nordic, that is Nordic country. So like, I don't need a carbon fiber tube. It was kind of bougie and fancy at the time. But like, when you have a 12 round aluminum tube and it's full of shells, and you swing that gun around, and you were used to swinging it around. And then I got my first Dissident/Briley carbon fiber tube, and I put that on. That was a noticeable difference in swing weight. And so I think that was probably one of the best innovations in tube-fed action shotguns was the carbon fiber tubes. And I don't know standard practice on those has never been to really use a clamp. I don't know that Briley even makes a clamp.
I haven't seen a clamp on a single one.
But yeah, the carbon fiber, since the carbon fiber tubes became the standard, I don't know that we see clamps hardly ever. So functionally, to hold that thing up, it's about as big of a wives' tale as your tube can't stick out in front of your barrel because the pellets will hit it. Like, it's kind of not a thing. So you don't need one. If you use one, you have to use it correctly, but they can be used correctly and not cause an issue also.
Yep. All right. This one is from a guy. He lives in Jersey, but he was at the South Carolina match. And he asked me a question in the parking lot as I was packing up to leave, and I wrote it down really quickly in my phone.
Forget about it.
And what I wrote down was 3-gun in restricted states, guy from Jersey. So he lives in a state where you can't have more than 10 rounds in anything whatsoever. And I'm sorry that I did not write down more specifically what you asked, but I think he was mostly talking about just like, how do I go about doing this? So I do remember that I think him or another guy like had all of his gear basically lived at another friend's house that was out of state because everything that he owned was illegal in Jersey. And so they basically had to head out to the next state to gather up the gear, go practice, go shoot matches, and then come back into Jersey. I mean, I don't know if there's any way around it. Like, if you live in a state that hates freedom and you can only have 10 rounds in a gun and all of your guns hold more than 10 rounds, I think it just kind of is what it is, man.
Safety deposit box?
Yeah. Well, I think the main problem is just like, you can't go to a range and use any of your stuff. So like if you're shooting like a Glock or something and you can shoot like 10 round Glock mags, then yeah, you can go practice with that. But like, I wouldn't want to like pin a dissident mag. I don't know about tube shotguns. I don't know how that works. If you can have a longer than 10 round tube,
I would just have a short tube.
Just have a short tube screwed on there. Rifles, you can certainly have 10 round mags in them. But what I would do is if I was living in something like that, thing is super hypothetically because I live in Utah for a very specific reason. I would say the thing to do, I would probably have all my stuff out of state. I would have a analog to my competition gun with a 10 round, my competition pistol with a 10 round mag in state that I could use to go practice. And I would probably just not practice with the other two guns because owning duplicates of everything with 10 round mags would be a freaking nightmare. If I shot a tube gun division, I would for sure just have a different tube and quad load my ass off in the basement. But I mean, there's just kind of no way around it. Like if you live in a state that doesn't let you have 10 round mags and you shoot open shotguns, like you just can't have your open shotgun there.
That might be a reason to pick another division. It's kind of like,
yeah, very true.
If it's easy for us to say like, well, move out of the state, Well, it's like for whatever.
No, that's a bullshit answer.
I know, but
I didn't say that for a reason. Yeah.
But for whatever reason, these are the cards you're dealt. But it's like I don't think.
Let me back up because I have a way better answer now that I thought about it for 10 seconds. I would have all of my guns in state. I would shoot a tube gun division, and I would have a shorter tube in state. I would have a friend's house over the border. All of my mags would live there. In state, I would have a 10 round mag for my rifle, a shorter tube for my shotgun, and 10 round mags for my pistol. And then when I crossed state lines, I'd pick up all my go shoot matches stuff. I'd go shoot a match. I'd drop them off back at my buddy's house, and I'd head back home. That's how I'd do it.
And we have friends/listeners from other countries that do things similar to that. I don't know how illegal it is where they come from, but I definitely know of people that come from British colonies that
I'm really sorry to my Canadian brethren out there. My wife is Canadian. We spend a lot of time in Canada. I have a lot of Canadian friends. I'm sorry your boy screwed you so bad. I don't know what else to say.
But
It's a bummer.
It's legit. Like, I mean, and there are folks in the U.S. who essentially have their gear and they pick it up on their way in and they leave on the way out. I also have heard it was a thing when I was living in Minnesota. We would have some Canadians come down for the Minnesota section USPSA match. I think that's where this story came from, but they actually had pop rivets in all their 2011 magazines to limit them to 10 rounds. And the first thing they did when they got to the range was they whipped out a DeWalt drill and they started drilling on their magazines. So they would drill out that pop rivet for the match, and they would have 20-round mags. And then before they went home, they would put the pop rivet back in, and then they would go home. Now that law has changed, obviously, but stuff like that has gone on. And then not telling you what to do. You got to make your own decision, but I do know that in some of those areas, shall we say, compliance is very low. So just go ahead and let your imagination run wild with that. But like we have good friends. I mean, Kyle Lissey's from California.
Yep.
You know, there's plenty of. California is the most active region of USPSA. All right, so like there's a lot going on over there. From what I hear, allegedly, third hand, compliance is very low. So, but you're playing with fire there, so you gotta make your own decision. But
Yeah, you are indeed.
I would probably be a single stack fool, like even more than I am now. That'd probably be what I would do.
Yep. Go to Circle Stack Division, son. All right. Last question. Said hi to you on stage 3 at Tar Heel Walkthrough. So I ended up getting DQ'd on stage 6 in the shoot house, left side front window, after shooting the target that was towards the entrance of the stage. I'll explain all this in a minute. It was the last stage of the walkthrough, and we talked about turning to the right instead of turning to the left, and I forgot. I would be interested if you and Adam, funny that he said you and Adam since we're both Adam. I would be interested if you and Adam could talk about poor stage layout, not necessarily DQ traps. Feel free to mention my name on the podcast, Charlie. Thank you, Charlie. So this stage was in what they called the 270-degree bay. And you used all 270 degrees of this bay shooting this stage. So what he's talking about, imagine, for the sake of clarity, I'm not going to describe the bay, but imagine you run into a shoot house in a very deep bay. So the berms are well behind you, and then you turn left, and there's a window on the left side, and then you turn left again, and then you shoot well past what the 180 would be. Like way, 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 way past the 180, which is still 20 degrees short of the berm at the entrance to the bay. So this isn't actually how the bay was laid out. It was kind of different, but it's the same kind of thing. That part was fine. It was, it made all my 180 senses tingle a little bit, but there was nothing inherently unsafe about it. What got you was now you are shooting through a window facing more or less backwards. And then when you go to leave that window, you need to rotate the other direction to keep from basically turning all the way around, right? So if you leave that window and you want to go
not path of least resistance, you got to do the hokey pokey and turn yourself around.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. So because you came in and you turned left and then you turned farther left, what you actually need to do is unwind all the way to the right in order to leave that room. But when you just look in your left peripheral vision, the door's right there. It's like 20 degrees away just to turn and run through that door. And it was a big topic of conversation when we were walking the stage as well. All of us, like, the main thing in my stage plan was like, don't turn left. Because I'm like, I just don't want to end my match here. It was it. I mean, he said don't talk about 180 traps, but this is a very 180 trap stage. Like it was so easy to turn left because every fiber in your soul said go that direction. I can. I'm not a big fan of 180 trap stages, but this one is a little bit different. So when I think of 180 traps, I think of you're shooting down a corridor. There's a bunch of barrels. There's a really tight position on the 180. And if you don't smoke that thing right as you see the target on the move, it's really easy to just walk past it as you're shooting it and break the 180. That's what I think of when I think of a 180 trap. Like you're just kind of shooting a normal stage normally, or, things like that. What actually on this same stage, we started in a pistol bay that was a different bay over, and the last target you shot before you dumped your gun was exactly on the 180 to the left. There was no getting around it, and one of our guys had a gun malfunction shooting that target, cleared it, and when he cleared it, broke the 180, because if you do anything from there except point the gun straight, you're going to break the 180. So things like that can be 180 traps. Was this thing a 180 trap? Yeah, kind of, but I think the stage was so out of the ordinary that I think the whole thing just required more thought than normal, which I don't necessarily think is bad. I didn't like that it seemed like a bunch of people were going to do this, and I think two did. They did not let you bring a video guy into that bay at all.
That's the first red flag.
Which I feel like is a sign that maybe they kind of jumped the shark a little bit. I think if your video guy can't come into the stage with you, maybe it's a little bit extra sketchy.
Not that everyone needs to be able to be allowed to be videoed. It's just like, wait a minute. If it's that close, what are we doing? You know?
Yeah. So the real question is, did it add anything? Like, was there wow, this was so awesome because of the way this is laid out? The answer is no. Not at all. All of those targets where you pointed back and you shot way back towards the other side could have all been on the 180 instead of on the 235. And I don't think it would have taken anything away from the stage, and it would have made it way safer all around, and you might not have gotten DQ'd. I don't like shoot houses in general. Now that I'm old enough to understand how easy it is to just end up behind an RO or something like that. Like, you need to kind of turn on RO to RO a shoot house.
No, you just run them over.
Yeah. And some shoot houses are laid out better than others. This one wasn't too bad, but this one definitely did have, like, you'd go into a room and then you'd go downrange into the room, shoot through a window, shooting uprange, and then have to unwind the other way and then go uprange into that room in order to exit the door. So there was a lot of, like, forward and back movement in addition to all of the, like, three-dimensional shooting. I thought it added a lot of unnecessary complexity and maybe a little bit of danger that didn't need to be there and didn't add anything to the stage. Now, having said that, I thought the stage was super fun. And I had a blast shooting it. It's tough. Like, is it a stage that I would have designed? Absolutely not. If I was the match director, I would have changed things around and been like, hey guys, let's just put these over here so this isn't quite as crazy. However, I wasn't the match director. I didn't take a week out of my life to go put this thing on the ground. So I'm really hesitant to, like, take a shit on Donnie for leaving the stage in the match, because, you know, he put in a bunch of work and I didn't, and it was a good enough match that I flew all the way out there and shot it. So, you know, it's a super bummer that you got DQ'd, dude. It's, you know, the cop out answer is like, hey, this is a big boy game, and blah 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 blah.
We're not opposed. We're not opposed to mental challenges. Like, being put in a confusing situation that is safe, I mean, that's a way to challenge people.
Yeah.
I have a few things on this. First, that came up there towards the end. As a competitor, if you feel yourself getting put into one of these situations, especially where like you feel like you might get uprange of an RO, be ready to tag him. Don't hurt him. Don't run him over. But guess what? Shit gets weird. I'm tagging the RO because I'm getting a reshoot because they did me dirty. All right? That's fair. All right? All's fair in love and war. All right? You tag the RO. That's RO interference. You get a reshoot. It's on good ROs. We'll let you catch them. You ain't going to catch me. If I'm on the clock, like you won't. Unless you did, in which case you earned it. So like have that in mind. But another thing. Double birds to all of you who complain about how many rules there are in USPSA, because 180 traps are literally illegal in USPSA. If you can see a target, it's legal for you to shoot at. It is in front of the 180. If you can see a target and it's uprange of the 180, the stage is illegal and you can get it thrown out. All right? So this is the reason why these exist. All right? So 180 traps really only exist in the outlaw world or at the club level. Where they exist in the outlaw world and at the club level, it is usually poor stage design. It is almost always poor stage design. Poor stages get designed for a myriad of reasons. Haste, lack of resources, all these things. Should they be avoided? Yes. Do they happen? Also yes. Are they as prevalent as they were when we started in the sport? Absolutely not.
You should have seen some of the bullshit that we shot back in the day.
Way more common. So as the sport has evolved and all the lemmings are running around like things aren't getting any better, on Instagram, all right, y'all have no idea, all right? The sport is so much more refined than it was pre-Three Gun Nation days. But like I remember, do you remember, did you just shoot any of the Three Gun Nation stuff? No, you didn't.
I only shot the Western Regional 1 year.
Were there green lines?
Were there what?
Were there any green lines?
Yes.
All right.
Minimum distance for rifle steel, yep.
Oh, so they had when the Three Gun Nation really kind of made prevalent the bay to bay stuff, where you were running around bays, and ranges had an issue with
the draw lines.
The draw lines.
Yeah.
So
I remember now.
The draw lines came from a DQ's gate. I believe it was in Alabama. There was one particular stage where essentially somebody drew early, and they set the precedent that was a DQ. And so they would brief you. They would brief you right up front. They're like, hey, 1 foot. If you do, it was very specific. And it was several years ago now, so I can't remember all the specifics. But I remember very specifically, I could probably come up with the guy's name if I thought about it long enough, but that's bad radio. But by the time we got there, so we were one of the last stages, and it was towards the end of the day. He's giving us the briefing. He's like, hey, this, that, the other thing. If you draw past here, it's DQ. And he's like, please don't. I'm so tired of DQing people. Like, it was very, it was very tempting. Like, there was a line, and there was a target right there. Right? So it was very tempting to do. And so, I mean, no less than 200 people shot that match, and they all went back to the corners of wherever they came from. And so that was known. And then the next Three Gun Nation match, they essentially had draw lines. So they had a different line where you could draw from. And then they were more cognizant of like, hey, that was really poor customer service. All right. They're like, our customers really were not done right by the way we set that up. So we as a promoter need to do a better job of not putting competitors in that position. All right. So we're 10, 15 years down the line of like evolving past this. When I first started 3-gun, there were 180 traps all over the place. Now, especially at a USPSA match, when some ding dong looks at a target, he's like, "Bro, that's really close to the 180." It's like, "Hey, buddy. No, it's not. It's like 160 degrees." But like, if it was past the 180, it's literally an illegal stage. All right, so if you got DQ'd for that, you'd be like, "Well, then throw this whole thing out because that's illegal," or it's going to get fixed before we even start. So from an event promoter thing, there's that, all right? So 180 traps are almost always stage design. Why are we putting competitors in that position? And you have to ask the question that Riser asked. I was like, okay, so in that particular instance, not beating up on this particular stage, but as an example, in that particular instance, did that add something to the stage?
So let's clarify really quick. The name of this bay was literally the 270 bay. Like that's what it was called.
There's your first hint.
It was one of those bays where it wasn't just a big square bay. The bay had 4 berms.
Yes.
And you entered through a slot.
Yes.
So the bay was almost a bulletproof circle.
Yes. Minus
like a little 3-degree wedge where you came in.
Yep. And so from a stage design standpoint, it's tempting for a match director to want to do that because they want to give you something a little bit more than a 180-degree plane, because it just, people live in that world so much. So it's like, oh, maybe here's a chance to give a look at something a little bit different. But you got to weigh it against, okay, do we think, is this really going to get a lot of people in a bad way? And then from a competitor's standpoint, all right, so if you're just a competitor, you don't get a vote on what this stage is. Maybe if you brought it up the day before the match, you're like, hey, this is kind of, and I've done that before. That's been several years. And if you really point something out, they really might change it. That's why at some matches, Texas 3-Gun Championship being an example, the staff match is literally separate from the main match. The staff competitors are not in the main match. So if they see something like this, or if they figure something out like that, they don't have to say, they can't or don't want to say, well, we already shot it this way, so we know it sucks, but everybody has to do it this way. All right, they're like, oh, that's a good point. We can fix that. You cut it off here. All right, going forward, everybody's going to have this new stage. That's why they would sometimes separate the staff match from the main match. I believe Zoo City does that as well. That's your really only chance to point something like that out. Like, hey, this is weird. Hey, this is kind of, But like once the match has started, you got to play it as it lies. And so you just got to be aware of that as a competitor, right? Just because it's like just because you're an American doesn't mean you can do whatever you want in public. All right, we're still a society with laws. Same thing here. Like, just because you're a competitor doesn't mean you can just go through there like a bull in a china shop. Like, if you got to be in it to win it. All right, so you got to be cognizant of like, oh, here's something a little sketchy. It behooves me to get this right, even though I may not be able to do it at full speed or the way I want to. You got to be cognizant of that. And the time to be cognizant of that is in the walkthrough. Be paying attention. A phrase, like I'm a millennial, right? So I'm allowed to be triggered by things. One of my Riser can't do this because he's too old.
I can't be triggered.
Yeah.
I'm just always jaded.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not only can I be triggered, like my shit's single action, okay? Like that, it's ready. And so a phrase that I'm listening for, especially in outlaw terrain matches, I'm listening for the RO to use the phrase roundabout. If they get to a shooting position and they say, engage the plate rack roundabout here. And then if they say, and then blah, 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 that would be a foot fault. I would be, pause. Where exactly? Roundabout here. Oh, you're messing up, dude. You're messing up.
Yeah, this is why I do not shoot Rocky Mountain anymore.
Yeah. So, like,
is this right here.
Yeah. Can I shoot from here? Yes. I will take one more step. Can I shoot from here? Yes. Take one more step. Can I shoot from here? No. Okay. So how are we going to... This rock here? Yes. I will pin them down. And usually they're kind of annoyed with me at this point. But this is where like some who don't read would call this ranged lawyering. This is knowing the rules and also being accountable to them. If I'm going to be held accountable, if this person could end my match based on approximations of their opinion of what I'm doing, the stage brief is the time to get that straight. So when you're in these kind of situations and you're kind of getting dealt a hand, you have to be defensive, especially in the walkthrough. Make them explain it to you very specifically. What is okay and what is not okay. And once they tell you what is okay, you need to program it like Reiser even did it there. He said, all right, and when I went into that position, I was just, don't turn left, don't turn left, don't turn left. Okay? Remember, we said you can't think in the negative. All right? So if all you're thinking about is don't turn left, you might turn left.
I actually did think turn right.
Yeah, so it needs to be turn right, turn right, turn right, turn right. I'm shooting that target first, and then I'm doing everything else. You need to...
And I even shot the targets, left target, then right target. So I didn't shoot the targets on the way in. I shot the targets on the way out because I naturally unwound in that direction to make me turn right.
Yep. You gotta...
So I came in deep. I shot the left target, then the right target. That already got me going in that direction.
Yep. You got to burn that, get very clear specifications on what that is, and then burn that into your memory so you can get through it. Because kind of like a tight partial on a no-shoot, all right, 2 Charlie always scores better than Alpha Mike no-shoot. All right. A kind of lame stage time always scores better than a DQ. So you got to be in it to win it.
Yep. All right. Well, we did have a follow-up. That is all the questions, but we did have a follow-up. We were going to start some shit with another podcast.
Oh, we should do it.
But that's going to have to... Well, we're at like an hour we're at almost 2 hours right now.
This is a bonus.
I'm making it
bonus sesh.
I'm making an executive decision. No, because this is going to take an hour.
Oh,
so I am making an executive decision. The next podcast, we're about to start shit with another podcast because it is. It's going to take a minute.
It's going to be pod violence.
I don't want it to be rushed. I want to take my sweet time. So,
I want them to feel it.
So we are calling it here, ladies and gentlemen. But if you're one of those that excuse me, if you're one of those that gave us a question, thank you very much. If you have follow-up questions, ask them. If you have a new question, ask it. Hit the ball our way and we'll hit it back to you guys. Mr. Maxwell, you want to sign us off with that sweet baritone?
Y'all know what time it is. Keep those overlays cards handy. This has been On the Perf, a very, very long On the Perf, and we will see you next time. Good night, everyone.